When I decided to do this talk again, or it's not again because I actually don't even remember what was in my first What I Believe, and it's been a really long time. I titled it, It's Complicated, kind of as a little joke on social media, your status, right? Your personal status as far as relationships and stuff. So I did join the fellowship in 1994, and I am on the verge of being a member for 30 years. It's kind of almost unbelievable to me. When I came here, I was drawn in by the principles of our UU faith and found them very in keeping with my life as a social worker and political progressive. And also, as it worked out timing-wise, we were parents of a then 4-year-old, almost 4-year-old, and decided maybe it would be a good idea, to expose him to some things. I was also an avowed atheist. During my early years with the fellowship, as Winona recently reminded me, I participated in a group considering the benefits and drawbacks of having or not having a minister. When I joined here, it was a time when there had been a minister in the past and there wasn't currently a minister. And at the time of the group I was participating in, I was quite opposed to having a minister. But guess what? I joined the board, and I eventually became president of the board for a while. And honestly, that's probably when I decided maybe a minister wouldn't be so bad after all. And as I said, I don't remember how long ago I did this before, but I know very well it's changed quite a bit. So, much has changed, and I will always be, like all of us, a work in progress. Aside from learning that ministers are okay in my Unitarian church, I've also gone from having discomfort around religious language to a more nuanced and deeper awareness of how prayer and other spiritual practices can add to my life and keep me centered in compassion. Over the years, as a member of the fellowship, I've participated in women's groups where we explored the divine feminine and sacred practices from way back. And I definitely learned a lot there. I've planned many services here, and I do try, although I've been failing a bit lately, to attend the meditation group here as much as I can. Recently, I both led and participated in our spiritual practice classes here and learned a lot. I also feel that the most important thing I've done over my many years here is engage in self-reflection and meditation. And this is a very welcoming and accepting environment for just about anybody to do that. Today, I want to share with you just a few, 3 things really, that are beliefs for me. And by the way, a lot of atheists don't like that word either, belief. We don't believe anything. It's based in fact and science and, that shtick. And I'm still, to be perfectly honest, as far as believing in a guy in the sky or she in the sky, don't believe that. But I am going to share with you the beliefs that are part of my personal mission statement. And by the way, developing your own mission statement is a great way to hone in on what you really think is important to you. So number one, it's not pie, P-I-E, pie. Caring about and helping an underserved group does not preclude caring about those not in that group. The either-or mindset hurts us. This was written by me on Facebook, where we all put stuff, a couple years or more ago, and it does remain a core belief for me. I don't remember exactly what was happening when I wrote that, but I can give a couple examples of why I may have written it during that time. And I also want to remind you that this is about me today, so I'm going to mention some bigger issues that could be an entire service or more than one service on their own. But we're not really going to get off into that too much. So first and foremost, I think the reason I wrote that when I wrote it was around the issue of white privilege, as well as the scarcity mindset that we see so much of. When someone can't understand that Black Lives Matter means exactly that, and is not a taking of something from a white person, there's a disconnect, in my view, to the whole of humanity. And there's a view that others, whoever those others are less than. For me, it is also about caring for animals and devoting time to rescuing animals and educating others about what happens, particularly to farmed animals. Some of you might not realize this, but vegans, like myself, often are subjected to cruel jokes and dismissive attitudes, in addition to some outright hostility. So with that and with many other things, when we challenge the status quo in any sphere, many get uncomfortable and then defensive and can respond with verbal aggression or worse. My view is we need to come from a place of love and an abundance mindset, regardless of the situation we're in. A long, long time ago, one of my psychotherapy clients, who had been active for a long time in 12-step addiction recovery, said to me, "We react from love or we react from fear. That's it." And I agree 100%. When we begin to feel resentment, that is often coming from a sense of scarcity and fear. The reaction by some to the recent student loan forgiveness program is an example to me of that type of mindset. People seeing resources as pieces of a pie for those they believe are deserving are not including a larger community beyond what they know and are comfortable with. Again, it is not pie. I can love animals and humans. I can care about elderly and children. We are all complex beings with multiple interests, multiple levels of accessibility to resources, myriad experiences that contribute to whether we have experienced equitable justice in our lives. Number 2, wilderness is not a luxury, but a necessity of the human spirit. This is a quote from Edward Abbey in his book, Desert Solitaire, that expresses one of my beliefs. And interestingly, Abby is not a likable guy, but his interest in keeping the wild wild speaks to me, even though he is personally kind of obnoxious. Again, everyone is complicated. I have learned that I need nature. I feel peace in the wild when there is silence but for birdsong, the wind rustling leaves, and water running in creeks. I always loved being at my mom's and stepdad's farm where I could see the stars at night. And it is so quiet out in the country, so different from the city. We all need to do it sometimes. When I recently made a solo trip to visit her, we walked outdoors at a nearby Catholic retreat center and walked the labyrinth there. And the trek to get to the labyrinth was a little bit long, but we made it. I made it fine. She has a little breathing issue. The breeze was blowing, and it was quiet, and we could see in the distance the llamas and alpacas they keep there. It was restorative. I've become more engaged in longer hikes when possible, and am part of a women's hiking group in Houston through Facebook. Houston Women's Hiking. Melissa's a member of that group. Many of our family trips have included opportunities for hiking, whether it is on trails at a national park or walking everywhere we go in a walkable city. Just being outside of our cocoon at home exposes us to so many opportunities to meet others who we can connect with on some level. When the weather is right, I start my day sitting outdoors with the dogs and watching the birds and squirrels and looking to the sky. There's something about looking at open sky, just looking up. It heals me and can be a meditative experience. This extremely hot summer has been very draining due to the need to stay indoors more. One of my bucket list items is to go on a silent retreat someday in a natural environment. And as part of our spiritual practice class right here, we discussed at length the need for retreat. Wilderness and time outside of our microcosm is for me quite definitely an essential part of any retreat I will participate in and needs to remain a part of my life. Finally, the belief in beloved community and its possibility. This last one actually really overlays everything for me. I spent years, as I said, doing work with domestic violence and sexual violence survivors, also volunteering escorting women into abortion clinics, and marching for a variety of causes. I've attended Black Lives Matter actions, the Women's March, and marches on the state capitol. It feels great to be with like-minded people supporting a righteous cause. But this creates an insular experience in some ways. What would happen if we went out of our way to seek out and attempt to create common ground with those with whom we disagree? There's the macro level beloved community of Dr. Martin Luther King, which seeks to create a just world for everyone. But on an individual level, can't there be a beloved community as well? And if we truly believe in the concept on the macro level, shouldn't we be seeking it out more on an intimate, personal level? I believe that one of the only things that is going to break down the barriers and massive division among people now may be the ability to communicate effectively and connect with someone who is vastly different from yourself. In Think Again, organizational psychologist Adam Grant reports that some of the recent research shows that by forming a personal connection and sharing real-life stories that explain why you feel the way you do about some things is what helps shift mindsets. Not lectures, not posting memes on social media, or debating. It is so easy to be kind and gracious to our like-minded friends and family, but the rubber hits the road when you seek to discover that connection to someone with whom you have very little in common. I don't mean to be a Pollyanna, but I have found that even in my professional role, finding that thread of connection with someone, however small, makes a huge difference in establishing rapport. What if we practice this everywhere we go? And trust me, I am challenged to remind myself daily of my own belief and intention related to this, even when driving the car. Just yesterday in the gym, I saw a man I've chatted with many times, pleasantly, and also his young adult son was there, who I blushingly will tell you has praised my deadlifting achievements as an old lady. I noticed yesterday that the older man was wearing a Trump t-shirt. Immediately, I started thinking unkind things. But I recentered my mind and disrupted those thoughts. Not only are they unkind, though not spoken, and if you don't get it, they don't need to be spoken. It's better not to be spoken. They aren't helpful to me either in terms of my own stress level. I don't need to increase my blood pressure. I actually take medication to specifically bring it down. After my work with victims of all sorts of abuse, I found myself in the challenging role of seeing clients who had been abusive to partners and others while working with an employee assistance program. And I wasn't going to tell you this, but let me just say it. It was the U.S. Postal Service. I was also seeing a lot more men in that practice than, of course, I saw at the local women's center. Not that we didn't see men, we did. Initial anxiety gave way to the reframing for myself and the reminder that we are all human. Almost everyone can learn and grow and become a better person. I was able to connect with these clients just as I had with those who had been on the receiving end of abuse, and it made me a better therapist. And they were receptive to input for the most part. This circles us back to my first belief and the awareness that everyone is worthy. In fact, as those of us who have been UU for a long time know, it's part of our UU principles to see inherent worth and dignity in everyone. An example of someone who demonstrated this for me was Sister Helen Prejean in her work with death row inmates. We need to get out of our heads and practice these beliefs in the real world. I want to close today with a quote or two that I found relevant. I have to say, it's sort of like buying a new car, and suddenly you notice all the other cars like yours on the road. But I have been finding wisdom everywhere these last few weeks for this sermon. While searching for some accountability information for work recently, I saw this quote from Bill Bullard, a Republican politician from Michigan, now deceased. He died of COVID in 2020, which I have slightly edited for brevity. Opinion is really the lowest form of human knowledge. It requires no accountability, no understanding. The highest form of knowledge is empathy, for it requires us to suspend our egos and live in another's world. It requires profound purpose, larger than the self kind of understanding. And lastly, with apologies for lack of an attribution, I don't think there was one when I found this, a mantra I hope to remember so I can set intention when interacting with someone who differs from me. This will allow me to deeply listen and respond respectfully rather than listening so I can make a comeback or counter their opinion or statement. Just like me. This person has beliefs, perspectives, and opinions, just like me. This person has hopes, anxieties, and vulnerabilities, just like me. This person has friends, family, and perhaps children who love them, just like me. This person wants to feel respected, appreciated, and competent, just like me. This person wishes for peace, joy, and happiness, just like me. Thank you so much for listening today.